Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for our Genealogy Week program, Walk Where Your Ancestors Walked, Virtual Heritage Travel Using AI and Online Resources. I'm Julie Parsons, Senior Assistant Branch Manager at Harford County Public Library's Bel Air branch. This performance is being recorded and will be available along with a handout at hcplonline.org on the HCPL Universe page for the next 4 weeks. Now let's get on with the show. We are thrilled to have Lisa Lisson back with us this evening. She is a great presenter, lovely to work with, and has such a passion for genealogy. Lisa is a leading genealogy expert and the founder of Are You My Cousin, a comprehensive online resource dedicated to empowering family history enthusiasts worldwide. Through her website, engaging YouTube channel, and sought-after speaking engagements, Lisa equips researchers with practical strategies and clear tutorials to navigate the exciting world of genealogy and cultivate their family trees with confidence. Recognized for her expertise, Lisa has authored numerous genealogy articles, created hundreds of helpful YouTube videos, and presented internationally. Her latest book, 100 Questions for Grandma, published by Callisto Media, offers a valuable guide to unlocking cherished family stories. Lisa will be using a PowerPoint presentation during her presentation this evening. You can adjust what you are seeing on your screen by using the screen view in Zoom. Please feel free to submit any questions via the Q&A feature on Zoom, and at the end of the show, I'll try to get to as many as I can. We would really appreciate it if you could also complete a quick survey after the credits. We use your input to help choose topics for our virtual genealogy program, so it is time well spent, and it just takes a moment. Thanks. And now it is my pleasure to once again introduce Lisa Lisson.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be with you guys again. I love speaking with your group, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you actually two of my passions, and that would be genealogy, certainly, but also travel, both virtual and in person. So let me go ahead and share my screen so everybody can see that. Perfect. I think everybody can see that now. And so, yes, we are going to be hiding some things here so I can see. We are going to be talking about walking where your ancestors walked and virtual. So this is, many of you, if you've been with us before here at the library for some of our programs, or I will teach you how to find records and where to find records and where to look for ancestors. And this time we're going to kind of take a little different look at it. And we're going to think about kind of why we find our ancestors and what we can do with that and how we can experience our ancestors' lives, how we can walk and enjoy their homelands and see a little bit more about what their lives were like. But we don't have to actually get on an airplane to do it. We can do it right from our living room couch. So in tonight's presentation, what we are going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about kind of, what is heritage travel and the benefits and why you really even want to do this. I want to show you how to plan a virtual heritage trip, a virtual trip of your own. I am going to be going over lots of different resources. I'm going to challenge you to get creative with some of your own resources for planning and experiencing your ancestors through virtual travel. And I'm actually going to be showing you some AI. We're going to be using AI tools to help enhance our virtual travels. And this is so much fun, guys. You're going to love it and you're going to really enjoy. I know you're going to run right out and start planning to travel right from your living room couch. All right. So how did I get into this after all? This is kind of it's a little bit different for me, but one of the things, certainly as a genealogy researcher, I've done a lot of research on my own family, obviously, and I discovered my most distant ancestor that I can find, my sixth great grandfather. His name is Barnabas Talbot, and he is or was a coffee man on Ivy Lane there in London. Now, I actually have documentation of this, so I know that he was a coffee man in London. And so what I've discovered is that coffee houses actually were quite popular, and this was prior to the whole tea, I won't say revolution, but the whole tea drinking that we think of in London today. Actually, coffee predated that. No, it wasn't our Starbucks coffee for sure, but it was certainly part of the heritage. And so I thought this would be really cool because I discovered where Ivy Lane was in England. So my idea, what I wanted to do, is I wanted to take a trip to London. I wanted to experience my heritage. I was certainly going to do some research, I would, but I wanted to get a cup of coffee and I wanted to walk over and have a cup of coffee in the vicinity of Ivy Lane. Now, Ivy Lane does not actually exist anymore, but the cross streets do. And so it's actually in the shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral. So I was going to head over to London as part of one of my experiences, get a cup of coffee, and I was going to go sit in that general area and enjoy my coffee and kind of commune, so to speak, with my ancestors. And that was actually going pretty well, except there was one little problem. I was planning this trip in March of 2020. And so, as you know, certainly the pandemic hit. And unfortunately, all my plans, obviously did not come to fruition. But I love to travel. And so I started to think, well, how can I do this? And initially I was thinking this is going to be several years down the road. I'll try to get back to this. But as we were kind of going through those early days of COVID, as we were watching, I was on social media and I was seeing what people were doing, and I realized, huh, if I really want to travel during COVID, which you could do it virtually. And the way I kind of figured that out, I realized it had to be really creative. And I was going through some of the social media on Facebook, and I was watching this one couple who had their cruise canceled. And so every night for the length of their cruise, I think it was a week, they decided that they were going to cruise from their living room. So they had a Caribbean themed dinner every night. They had fun adult drinks they went all out and put umbrellas in the drinks. And they already had clothes because they bought clothes for their cruise. So they dressed up in their cruise clothes. Sometimes, it was tropical. Sometimes it was, a night dress up as you would for dinner. They found YouTube videos of the islands, so they'd play the YouTube videos of the islands on their TV. They put on island music, and every night they experienced their cruise. And so I thought, I can actually do that. I can do that, but do it genealogy style. And that's where this whole concept of traveling and exploring our ancestors virtually really kind of started with me, and where I started to get a little bit more creative. But let's back up for, well, just a minute here, because I want to talk a little bit about this concept of heritage travel. And it really is something that was really beginning to become quite popular and kind of taken off in the industry pre-COVID, but certainly since then, since the travel has really resumed back and going great guns, it's really become more and more popular. And what heritage travel is really just going and exploring the culture and the area where your ancestors lived. Now, it may be that you go to, where the street that your ancestor lived on. You may know the specific house, perhaps it still exists. And so you go and you see these places and you literally walk the streets that they walked. But not everybody has that depth of knowledge, perhaps of ancestors. It could be, or perhaps a number of generations back, particularly when we're going back into, say, Europe and other parts outside of America. Then you may only know a little bit more of the generalities. And so it may be more, say, if you have an Italian culture that you want to explore, it may be a certain region. So maybe the region of Sicily. If your ancestor came from that area, you may not have the specifics, but to go and explore and to enjoy learning about the Italian culture in that part of Italy. So this is a really good way this is what we're seeing people doing. We're seeing people doing this through DNA. They're identifying areas that they want to go learn. So it can be as specific a location as somebody wants, or it can certainly be a much more general. It's because travel is personal. And so it can be either way. It doesn't even have to be, we tend to think it's going to be Europe or some, big place. Like I wanted to go to London. It doesn't have to be. It can be somewhere here in the US that maybe you just haven't been before or haven't explored that side of the family. Now, when I say heritage travel has really grown, it really has. And I checked on some stats today, and the Grandview Research had done looking at the market for heritage travel. And they said in 2024 that heritage tourism market was valued at approximately $604 billion. So it is expected to grow, around 4% going forward. So it's definitely something that's out there and people are doing. But now let's think about it in terms of virtual, because again, not all of us can travel. So virtual heritage travel is exactly what we've been talking, kind of circling around here, is armchair traveling. And it's exploring that culture, that area where your ancestors lived right from home. And I really believe that we can engage all five of our senses to have fun and an insightful experience when it comes to exploring your ancestors on the computer. Is it the exact same as being there in person? No, of course not. But it is a way when we are not able to travel to experience some of what our ancestors experienced as well, taste the flavors that they tasted through their food. So there's lots of things that we can do to experience what our heritage is and to do it virtually. And so why do that? Again, I kind of touched on this, but one of the big things is I think it helps us to when we're traveling and exploring these areas. I think number one, we connect to past generations and connect to our roots. And I think that's really important. It's very easy in genealogy research, and I have certainly done this, to get really caught up in find that ancestor, birth, marriage, death date. All right, move to the next one, birth, marriage, death date, and just kind of keep moving through the records. And that's a fabulous way. Absolutely. Many of us do it and we love it. But sometimes it's easy to forget that our ancestors on that family tree are more than just a name and dates. And they have stories to tell and stories that they can tell us and things that we can learn from them by understanding their lives. So it helps us when we travel, whether virtually or not, or in person, to connect to that past generation, but also to learn about their culture, why they made the decisions they made to leave, perhaps, or why they made the decisions they did to go different areas. It helps us to learn, what influenced not only a move, maybe what influenced why they did the work that they did, why they ate the foods that they did. So again, it's helping us to learn a little bit more and have a little bit more insight into our ancestors' lives and decision-making process. And so when I say that travel, virtual or in person, will improve your research, I truly mean that. I mean it to the depths of my heart, because what we're talking about is social history. And you may have heard, uh, and you may have done some studying and done some research, social history research for your ancestors, but that's exactly what we can start to build. And when you understand your ancestor, when you understand what their motivation was, what was happening around them, what they were seeing every morning they woke up, how the weather patterns were affecting them, the political situation in their country was affecting all of that. When you understand how that affected your ancestor, then you are actually going to be a better researcher. You're going to be able to find them easier in the records. And of course, when it comes to virtual travel, you can save a lot of money by not having to buy a plane ticket or a train ticket or gas money. So there's lots of reasons why this is can be important to you, and there's really no reason not to with today's technology and a little bit of time. So what can you actually do? All right, I think you're going to be surprised at what you can actually do when it comes to traveling virtually. You can literally walk the streets of the where your ancestor walked, and I'm going to show you how to walk those streets. You can tour museums. So you can go into a museum and you can tour their exhibits and you can learn about their the country. You can learn about the the local area there. Excuse me. So you can learn about the culture and the lifestyle there going through museums. You can certainly talk with the locals, talk with people who live there, whether they may be locals. You could, perhaps talk to other genealogy researchers if you find people, but this is a great way to talk and learn about the culture. And you can taste the food. So this is a really fun piece of it. Think about it. So, we're experiencing an area in many, many different ways. And there's even more, and I'll share with that in a moment. Now, just like with any kind of travel, whether you are traveling to the beach this summer, whether you're traveling to Disney World, or whether you're just going to do a virtual travel from your home, you have to start with a plan. So you need a plan. Without a plan, you're not going to be successful in your research or in your virtual travel, but you're probably not going to get it done, quite frankly. And so you want to make sure that you have a plan. And so the first thing you want to do is to decide what's your itinerary. Where are you going to go? Or in this case, because we're doing virtual heritage type, who are you going to go? Which ancestral line do you want to visit? Is it your ancestral line that immigrated from England hundreds of years ago? Is it your ancestral line that immigrated from Germany? Is it your ancestral line that actually went out and settled the western part of the US and you live on the East Coast? So where do you want to go? Decide, who it is and which family you want to focus on when it comes to that. And then you decide where you want to go, obviously, along with that. And looking at my Talbot ancestors, my coffee man ancestor, definitely, my ultimate goal is to go to London, but there's some other places. I can go to Virginia and create an entire virtual trip around Virginia to see my ancestors that way. So it doesn't have to be, thousands of miles away. It can be quite local as well. Or not local, but it can be here in the US. And then you want to decide what it is you're going to do. Oh, just like you go to the beach, you make a list. What do you want to do? Do you want to just sit on the beach all day? Do you want to go hit that outlet? Make sure you have time to go to the outlet malls that are at the beach oftentimes. Do you want to, which restaurants do you want to go to? So we want to be very intentional about this itinerary and what we want to do. Now here's a sample itinerary. This is a sample of what I created for myself to do a virtual travel to London to see my ancestors where my ancestor was when I couldn't do it, in person. And yes, I actually had a cup of coffee while I was creating this itinerary. So who was I going to follow? I'm going to follow Barnabas Talbot and the Talbot ancestry, the Talbot ancestors. And where did I want to do this? I wanted to do it in London, England. Okay, that was already kind of a given for me. So what did I want to do when I got there? Well, I wanted to walk where he lived and worked. Okay, so that meant I needed to find out the location of Ivy Lane. Okay, I wanted to visit the cultural sites. In this case, St. Paul's. I wanted to taste the food. So I was interested in tasting some traditional British foods. I wanted to listen to music. And in this case, I actually associate it with church bells, so that's just personal choice there for myself. And I also knew I wanted to talk to some locals. Now, obviously, my ancestor lived there in late 1600s, so obviously I wasn't going to find locals in that sense. But in this case, I would reach out to local researchers who could give me some added value or some added information about that time period. And then the biggest thing here, guys, when you're doing a virtual travel, is you've got to put it on your calendar. Because if you don't put it on your calendar, you're probably not going to do it. You're going to think, okay, someday I'll do that. Well, someday is not a day of the week on the calendar. So you want to make sure you add it to your calendar, just like you would a real trip. I mean, an in-person trip. So this is kind of the things that I would think through about how did I want to do it. And then I would proceed to figure out how to actually accomplish this. So that's what we're going to move into now. And we're going to use artificial intelligence or AI to help us do this. And this was some of the early AI things that I actually started experimenting with. And it was so much fun. It was really good. And I was amazed at what all I could actually create and find and how I could create this sample. So I'm going to actually walk you through an entire planning and show you how to use AI to find what you need for your virtual travel, right? So in this talk, I think ChatGPT and Google Gemini are two very popular ones that are out there. There are many, many AI platforms out there. They are coming, it seems like frequently there are new ones showing up and it's hard to keep up with them all. But I think the two primary ones that are being used and that I have used are ChatGPT as well as Google Gemini. They have free and paid versions. And I will be honest, guys, I've never paid for either ChatGPT or Gemini. I find the free versions absolutely satisfy and are adequate for what I need to do with that. The interesting thing when you're working with them, as we know, if you've had a chance at this point to really work through AI or experiment, is it does continue to learn and adjust your answers. And I'll show you a little bit of how it does that. But when you are talking, you want to, I think of it as talking to almost a person, an assistant, and then we can kind of have a back and forth with it. Now, AI, even still, even after these several years here that it has been in play, it is not always accurate. So you do need to pay attention. Don't take everything for that it tells you as absolute truth or that it's accurate. If something feels a little off or it seems weird, check into it and explore it a little bit more to see. And you will learn over time which prompts will give you the best results. And I'll talk through a little bit about that as well. So for the example that I'm going to do, I use ChatGPT and I use the 3.5 version, which is their basic free version. So I didn't pay for this. I didn't pay for the next level up. So if you have not been on ChatGPT, since we're not face to face, I can't ask who has been and who hasn't. But once you get into it, the link for this is in your handout, and you just go into when you open that up, it'll tell you message ChatGPT. It'll have it right here, a box at the bottom, and that's where you're going to type your answer. Same thing for Google Gemini. It's it originally came out as Google Bard, and then they changed it to Google Gemini. You just type it in. Again, the link is in your handout, and we have it. You just go to the home page, and you can type your prompt in here. Sometimes this section up here will come and go. I love it though because it says here's some things you might want to try. And one of the first things it said was explore travel destinations. I thought that was really cool. And so it was kind of giving you some ideas of what you could do, but absolutely it can be used for that. And I think I said I was using ChatGPT for the examples. I'm actually using Google Gemini. My apologies for that, guys. I said the wrong thing. So I did use Google Gemini for this, and this is what I wanted to show you here this is actually a video, and you can see how it kind of has this long thread. Now, you don't worry about trying to read everything because we're going to pick it apart here in a minute, but it just scrolls right through when you ask a prompt, and then it gives you the answer, and then you follow it up with another prompt. So in other words, when you ask it a question and you're having that conversation back and forth, you don't want to answer it. You don't want to start a whole nother chat. Keep everything in the same chat, which is what I've kind of done here. And it just goes down. You can see as I scroll it down a little bit. I think that's, yep. So that everything kind of stays together and it remembers what you've talked about, and then it will help adjust its responses later on. So, all right, so that's kind of what it looks like. So now I want to show you the prompts and the prompts that I used to start this. Because remember, I really wanted to figure out and create this exploration to explore actually a different side of my family, or my husband's side of the family, and that is some ancestors who immigrated into New York. So in the prompt, what I had put in there, so this was when I started the conversation with Google Gemini, this is the prompt that I used. And I said, I have traced my ancestors back to New York City in the late 1800s. My ancestor arrived in the 1880s and 1890s, and they were Eastern European families from Russia, today what is Lithuania. They lived on Broome Street in the Lower East Side of New York. So please create a virtual tour of that area for me. So when you're asking AI to help you plan this virtual tour, a couple of things that are going to be really important in these prompts, and that is you tell it what it is. What you have to give it some context. So the context here is that I've traced ancestors back to New York City in the late 1800s. I'm telling it they were Eastern European families from the 1880s to 1890s. All right, and I'm indicating that yes, this from Russia, that it's Lithuania today, because from Russia could be quite a large area. So I give them context about who they were, when they came or when they lived there, where they lived, what part of New York, because that's important. And then this is what I want you to do. You create a virtual tour of that area for me. So I did that. And this is part of this is the answer it came back with. And this is a part of, it's a little bit long, but this is what it started with. And I love this, guys. I'd love to help you explore Broome Street in the Lower East Side of New York City. I thought that was really cool. It's, I would love to help you. And so it set the scene for me. Okay. It set the scene, told me a little bit about what that Lower East Side in the late 1800s was like. That it was bustling, it was gritty, it was a vibrant immigrant hub. Millions of people from Eastern Europe, like my ancestors from Lithuania, poured into that neighborhood. It says Broome Street in particular was a microcosm of diversity. And then so it's telling us that I can take now a virtual tour. It's going to talk about how to walk around the streets. They were cobblestone streets. They would have had horse-drawn carriages, and towering brick tenement buildings. So it's giving me a very visual look of what is there. It actually, when I scrolled down on that page, it actually even gave me a picture. So this is actually the Lower East Side of New York. I'm like, oh, this is really great. This is so cool. So I thought this is perfect. This is a great place to start. And it's telling me that, what the street, what it looked like. Let me go see what it looks like today. So I hopped over to Google Maps and I found that area, and I found Broome Street over on Google Maps. So this is the Lower East Side of New York, if you guys have it familiar with New York at all. And this is Broome Street here, running through here. And this is the area around where that particular photograph that we saw was taken. And so I thought, this is a really good idea. So I need to see this. Not only do I have an idea of what this looks like and where it is in New York today, I want to see what it looks like from the ground level. So I grabbed the little yellow man from over on the bottom, I drug him right up there, and I plopped him right down there on Broome Street, the corner of Broome Street and Orchard Street. And this is what I got to see. All right, so this is what I'm seeing here. This is Orchard Street right here. This is Broome Street right here. And I'm looking at up close the tenement buildings, and these are buildings that were there when my ancestors were there. And they would have been seeing these fire escapes. I'm seeing, they're not the tall skyscraper things, obviously, but these are the types of buildings that they would have been in. I do know that they were in a tenement. And the original one they're in is no longer there, but I can get a visual of what the buildings might have looked like. I can literally walk down the sidewalk virtually, and with Google, you can move your cursor and go right down the sidewalk. So I can actually go down the sidewalk and see the streets that they lived on. So this was a really nice view. When I saw this, I really started to get that appreciation of, oh wow, what if they lived on the top floor? And at that time they wouldn't have had an elevator. And I'm thinking, oh my word, she had all these young children, and that would have just, I start to get that visual and that feeling of, wow, now I get, life was really tough, right? And then as I strolled along down the streets using the Google Maps Street View, I actually passed this building here. Now, it is no longer a synagogue at this point, but it was. And what it is actually a building, the synagogue, where some of my husband's ancestors attended. So I found this literally or virtually walking down the streets of New York, down Broome Street. So I thought that was such a cool find. I can actually see it. So that the next time I go, I can actually go in person and see it and visualize if that's going to be an option for me. But I thought, oh, perfect. Here I have this wonderful photograph, and I have an idea of what it looked like and where it sits in comparison to where my ancestors lived. So it was just, I was thrilled to find this and then to share it with my husband. So then I went back to that chat, that long stream of chat, so I asked it about the streets, and it told me. And then after looking at the streets, it says, it gave me a section. It said, beyond the streets. It said, here's some places that you want to look at. Okay, you want to look at the Tenement Museum on Orchard Street because it offers some ideas and can give me a firsthand look at living conditions of my ancestors. The Museum of Jewish People tells the story of the Jewish immigration to America. The Yiddish Folk Art Museum. So it's given me some really good ideas to look at. And so I decided I needed to ask it more questions about that. And I said, that is really great. It gave me great information. I could look at the streets. And it gave me some really good ideas for museums. But what I really needed to know were the website links and additional resources that these museums would provide for online patrons. All right, so online patrons here because this is virtual. And so I said, and by the way, give me the website links, please. I wanted to save myself some work. And so these are some of the answers it came back with. So this was a long thread that it gave me. And again, still on that same page, it said, oh, sure, here we go. So it told me about the Tenement Museum, gave me the website, and it told me a little bit about what they had on some of the virtual tours and their exhibits online. Oh, this is great. This is a really great links that I can link into and kind of walk through, the virtually and see what their apartments might have looked like. And so that was a really great find. The Yiddish Folk Art Museum tells me a little bit more about the virtual exhibits that they had there that I could look at. So Yiddish folk art through curated online exhibitions featuring stunning objects, historical context, and educational material. So again, other things that I can see, collections for everyday artifacts. This is really great. These are things that I can learn about my ancestors. So I'm visiting a museum basically. And then there's the Museum of Jewish People. And so what I can see here is that it gives me, again, the online resources that it has that I can click through. So don't hesitate. Ask it to give you, those URLs because it will save you some time going forward. So I was like, this is great. So not only do I know what the street looks like, I know the location, I've been to some museums now. And so I said, are there any don't miss sites in the Lower East Side of New York that I should include on this virtual tour? Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that I should actually do? In other words, I'm actually like kind of asking it to tell me what it is I don't know to ask, right? So I said, what are those don't miss sites? And so it gave me this. It gave me Cat's Delicatessen. So a delicatessen, because remember, food was one of those things. The museum at Eldridge Street. Again, this is a beautiful 1887 synagogue. It has a wonderful museum. It gave me to go to the Pickle Guys, the family-owned shop of pickles. But I don't know if you noticed something about all three of these answers. And the problem is they're not virtual. So Jim and I was supposed to remember, I had told it at the beginning, and this is a virtual tour. I need a virtual tour. And all of a sudden, the AI started going off the rails. So again, remember, it's not always perfect, but I guess too, we're not either. So I went back and I called it out on that actually. I said, okay, remember, this tour is entirely virtual. I need ideas for sites that I can tour virtually. And does that change any of your recommendations? And so AI, again, it had to be entirely virtual. And so AI came back and it apologized. That's a little scary actually, but it apologized. It said, my apologies for not focusing on the virtual options. So here's what I recommend. And so it listed a few out. And again, one of them being the NYC historical maps, which would be an idea to look at. The Bowery Boys have virtual walking tours. And so that was which was a great way to think about things. I had not thought about exploring that from a virtual walking tour, but I was like, great. So I had to get it back on track. Don't be afraid to ask it and to actually challenge it. So if it gives you information that's really off the rails, go ahead and ask for it again. All right. So I think we're pretty good. I think we're pretty good on that. And I thought, all right, I've looked at the street scenes, I've done the museums, I've figured out where I want to go. Now I want to taste the foods because I don't know about you, but when I travel, I really, really like to try different foods. I don't know if I'd say we're foodies, but I guess we were. So I told Chad, I said, that is great. Great information. Thanks. I said, I'm a foodie and I love to try new foods. Now, since I can't travel, I want to try taste of my Eastern European heritage at home. All right. So please suggest foods and recipes of my ancestors that I can easily make at home. All right. So I've given it some, again, always giving it context. I gave it some context. I said I can't travel. Remember, so again, kind of reminding it that, hey, this needs to be virtual, so, and then telling it what exactly I wanted, right? I want food and recipes that my ancestors that I can easily make at home. And so it's started spit out quite a long list, quite frankly. And I'll share with you just a few of the ones that it shared. But because I had told it that my ancestors were from Lithuania, or what is today Lithuania, they came back with, I know I'm not going to say this right, but a potato dish. Let's go with that. And it even gave a picture. And the nice thing about this picture is that this is clickable. So this is actually a live URL. So when it spit out that, it also gave me a link to the website by clicking on this picture, so that then I could go find the recipe to decide if that was the one that I was going to make. It actually sounds quite delicious. Anything potatoes sounds good. Gave me another one, another potato pancake. So I'm starting to actually get a sense of a little bit of that culinary heritage. Potatoes, I think, were probably pretty important. So this is a crispy potato pancake. This is actually, I think, more of a Polish street food, but this, again, in that area. And this would be a clickable image there. So it gave me, that would go to a live site, a live website. And then it gave me another potato pudding recipes. Again, there seemed to be a potato theme going here. And that's great because it told me how it's traditionally made, and it gives me this one actually links out to a YouTube channel. So it's giving me ideas of things to make. It's also giving me the resource I need to make it. So I could put these potato dishes on my itinerary of things that I want to do, in addition to traveling the streets, in addition to traveling to the museums and checking those out. This is, again, something I can do at home. But then I decided there was a little bit more that I needed to do. Well, what happens for those of us, or if there's something maybe you're not a cook, maybe you don't want to do that, but you want to try the foods. So I said, okay, there are foods from my husband's Eastern European Jewish heritage that excuse me, I said, are there foods from my husband's Eastern European Jewish heritage that I can order to try at home? Now, because AI went off the rails earlier when I asked it about don't miss ideas, I said, let's be clear. I decided to make sure it understood the context. I am not looking for a meal or a restaurant delivery service. Okay. I'm not trying to order a meal from down the street. I am looking for food products specifically that can be ordered. And again, please provide the links to those websites. So I was like, this was another way of going, because there are going to be some foods that I either can't make. There are going to be some foods, recipes, perhaps I can't get the ingredients that I would need to make a particular dish. So this is another way to explore if you are looking for your ancestors' foods and wanting to kind of explore their culinary heritage. This is another way to do that, and can be a little bit easier. And so it said, absolutely, we're good to go here. And so it said, recommended some bakery items. So this, again, it gave me quite a long list. I'm giving you samples from that, but it gave me a long list. And it suggests challah, so it's telling me that a little bit of the history of it, why it's important. Okay, it's the braided bread. It's the symbol of Shabbat and holidays, and where I could find it. So it recommended Zabar's in New York is a place that I could order some. Also, the Challah Hub in Boston would be another place that I could order it from. The Rugula is a pastry. It's giving me a couple ideas of places that I could do that if I want something nice and sweet in a pastry. Bialy. So again, it's giving me places where I can actually order these foods. So not to make them, but to just order the foods that way. There are a number of ones out there these days that will do that as well. But to be able to order the food is a really fun way to do it, and it can, especially if you're not a cook or you want something a little more authentic that maybe you can create at home. So you can add this to your virtual trip. All right, again, you've seen the streets, you've gone to the museums, you've and now we can look at the food and explore the food that way. So this is it's a fun way to do these things. And so then I got to thinking, well, when I go out to dinner at a restaurant, if I'm traveling and I go to dinner at a restaurant, usually there's some music. It might be, on a stereo system, and it could be live music. So why not? Let's explore some traditional foods while we're eating them. And while you're eating these and you're exploring the museums, why not listen to some traditional music? So I said, hey, what do you recommend? What would you recommend for this? And I was actually quite surprised because it had really good ideas. So I said, sure, let's complement your journey to this heritage. And let's listen to some virtual experience. So it's actually recommended three different their YouTube videos, and their music. And one's an ancient stringed instrument, similar to, it's called the Lithuanian zither. So I thought, oh, how cool is that? Some of the traditional dances that they would have listened to. So I was thrilled to find these. I actually clicked through and played some of these, and they were a lot of fun to listen to as well. It gave me some examples because this is an Eastern European Jewish family that I was researching. It suggested some of the traditional Jewish chants that you could listen to as well. So it gave me a lot of ideas on how to just enhance that experience. So, I'm seeing these wonderful things, I'm hearing the music, I'm tasting the foods, and I'm experiencing what my ancestors were experiencing. So that would be using AI to actually create this virtual trip that you can do and have an enjoy and then really be able to enjoy some time. I think this would be a really fantastic way to work through an AI prompts like we have here and be able to do this with, say, children, with your own children, with your grandchildren, or as a family thing to be able to you know, tell the story. Because I don't know about you, but I know when I sit down to tell some of the family about all the family tree, the eyes start to kind of glaze over. But if you can show them, if you have worked through and put together a virtual trip, you can you know, take them on a trip and you can show them the visuals to it. You can show them, you can go through the museums with them. You can have the music in the background. You can have the food for tasting, and that will keep their attention. So I think it's a really cool thing to do. And I think many people will enjoy doing that. But there are more ways to explore and travel virtually than just doing your own through AI and creating it that way. And so I don't ever want to miss some other opportunities that are out there because it can play such an important part in helping us explore our family. Now, one of the recommendations that I have would be to take a live walking tour. I was starting to see this happening more during COVID. And while I don't see quite as many today, I'm still seeing a lot of options for virtual tours, and you can always reach out and ask a company to do this for you. So I had a unique opportunity during the pandemic to actually take a walking tour of Prague in the Czech Republic. Now, at the time, the country was actually closed to visitors. Of course, it's not now, but I I feel like I've been there. So I had a 60-minute tour. I was part of a group, and we were hosted by the Prague City Adventures. And we would walk through the city. So we had a tour guide, and she walked us through. It was over Zoom, and she literally walked and showed us her city and very specific things about the city that were absolutely amazing. I was shocked at how smoothly everything went, and they were quite successful with this. So there are walking tour companies that are around. They are still offering virtual tours, but if you had like a group, maybe this would be a really fantastic thing to do, say at a family reunion, would be to see if you could work with a tour company in the area where your ancestor was, and hey, see if they would create a walking tour for you. I think that would be a fabulous activity for a family reunion and truly kind of help people connect to those roots. But so what did it look like for me? So this was what we were, this is Natalie. She was our tour guide there in the Czech Republic, there in Prague. And so she was walking. So she had actually two phones. She had the main phone and she was giving us, we were seeing her face to face. And then she was showing us things and she would turn it and show us the different buildings and show us different things that we wanted to see and shared wonderful stories and histories about the town. When she wanted to show us, say, what something used to look like, so we would see a building and then she would show us what it had looked like. In this case, this was during the Second World War or right after, and she would show it to us. She had a second phone with those images on it. So she had the two phones. And here's what was really amazing. We could talk directly to Natalie. So when I had a question, she's like, you raise your hand just like Zoom. She acknowledged you, and we were able to have a conversation and talk. So this, when I talk about talking to the locals and reaching out, this is how you can do it. And so this was an amazing, amazing trip. And now I really want to go to Prague in person. So I would absolutely encourage you to check these out, definitely. Now there are virtual museum tours out there as well. And COVID forced the hand for a lot of museums and places to incorporate these. And I guess the positive side on the back end of COVID is that we still have these available, and so it's helpful for those who cannot travel, whether it's expense or whether it's just health or whether it's just the physical travel. Not everybody wants to physically go, so this is a great thing that is still out there. This is actually the Epic. This is the Irish Immigration Museum in Dublin. It's a beautiful museum. It actually has this is the screenshot from their homepage, but it's a 3D space and you can explore it in 3D. It was pretty amazing. I was pretty amazed by it. And so it had a map and you could go in. So if you wanted to learn about music and dance, you went to this area. If you wanted to learn about, I'm not sure what Playing the World was, about games, you could learn about storytelling. It would do some different storytelling things, some of the creation and designing things. You could go into that and explore those exhibits in a 3D type of manner. So it was really interesting to see that and be able to move through the rooms. And you could go at certainly your own speed and explore which areas you wanted and which areas you did not want to. You didn't have to. But here was the dance area. You could actually learn to dance if you wanted. You could, I took a screenshot of it, but you could actually go right up to this wall and you could read about this. This is actually Hollywood to Broadway. You could actually read about some of the singing and the dancers, actors that they had. You could actually watch the river river dance type of dance, I guess. You could actually follow the steps and learn how to actually do it. So it was a lot of fun to be able to explore. I spent quite a bit of time exploring my Irish side of the family, so that was pretty fun. Excuse me. All right. The other thing you can do is take virtual classes and you can explore local culture with locals as well. So you can take those walks, you can go through those museums, and then you can also take some virtual classes, which are pretty amazing with that. And it can be anything from cooking to dancing to arts in the art section. And some of the ones that you could do would be things like the masterclass, which has masterclass.com has a large variety of different cultural types of webinars that you can watch. These are actually pre-recorded. So I think most of them are. I don't know if they do any live, but I'm going to show you some examples here in a minute. The League of Kitchens, if you want to learn to cook, they have some really great live and pre-recorded sessions that you can do for that. And there are a number of independent companies that will offer live stream virtual tours as well, much like the walking tour I had over in the Czech Republic. So you have lots of options with you that you can look at there as well. Now, this is the masterclass thing. I thought this was a really fascinating thing. You can explore your heritage through food. All right. So we have, I love this one. I want to take this one. The Michael Twitty one teaches tracing your roots through food, because our culinary heritage, not only is it fun to taste the foods that our ancestors made, when you look at back over the generations at those family dinners, those large dinners that you had that you could actually, the Christmas dinners, the Easter dinners, the family reunion, what were the foods that always showed up? Were they, or were they things that are traditionally American food, or is it stuff that might have been from, a further evidence of your German heritage or evidence of your Finnish heritage? So you never quite know from that. You would be able to see what they had and what you might be able to um, see evidence of roots and traditional ethnic groups in your family table. So that's a really fun way to learn about that as well. So masterclass.com is one. Now these I think they have a subscription based model. The League of Kitchens, again, thinking back into food and being able to try, they have live and they have pre-recorded. The thing I love about taking a live course, and they have a huge type, so their cuisine type has a huge different type, is that when you are taking that live cooking class, you can actually talk back and forth to the instructor. So you can ask, well, why that particular ingredient? Is that something that has been used for years? Is that a newer addition to the food and to the cuisine, or is that the is that is that something that has been around for multiple generations? So I'm seeing that. Is that indicative of this particular ethnic group? So definitely would recommend trying some of their recipes as well. I think you could find some really interesting and delicious, quite frankly, delicious foods that you can do. There's also a site out there called Pasta with Grandmas. This is a really fun site. This was a young woman, this is here on the right, and she started this site, and this is her grandma, and they teach people how to make pasta. Now, her grandma didn't speak any English, but the, the lessons were in English, and she would translate, and she got some of her grandmother's friends to do it. And so this became a big site to do, and they really enjoyed doing. It's called Pasta with Grandmas, and learn to make real Italian pasta. I thought that was a really fun thing. You can see here how they do it. Just again, these are over Zoom, guys. These very simple. Most of us, everybody has done Zoom these days. You have, as you're sitting here with me, obviously. So I would encourage you to um, think about possible ways of engaging and learning about your family's food. What about, here could be a really fun one, guys. What about learning to dance? What about learning some of the traditional dances of your ancestors? Okay. What if you put that as part of your learning about your heritage virtually? Maybe you have an Irish heritage and you want to learn the Irish jig. Okay, you can go on YouTube. YouTube has lots of different um, videos on not just Irish dancing, but folk dancing of different countries. You can just Google like you would a Google search on YouTube, and you can take lessons. Now, these would not necessarily be live, but you can actually learn and practice, and of course, play them over and over again so that you can um, add a little dance to your virtual travel with that. Now, okay, guys, it's your turn here. So let's kind of recap all this. What you want to do is you want to make sure at the beginning, what ancestor do you want to focus on, or what ancestral line, um what part of your ancestry do you want to focus on? All right, so you want to decide that. You want to decide where will you go? Okay. Again, what area are you going to look at? Are you going to look at a country in Europe? Are you going to look at Eastern Europe like I ended up doing? Are you going to look perhaps somewhere here in the US at a place you haven't been before? So where do you want to go? Just like you would. And then what you will do. Do you want to see visually where they lived, where they worked? Do you want to visit cultural sites? So you can use AI to help you find those sites that would be helpful if you're not aware of what's in the area, if you're brand new to that area. Do you want to try the foods or listen to the music? Okay, you can absolutely do that. AI can help you find that, and you can find out and enjoy, a meal and listening to the music there. You can talk to the locals. So if you want to take a class, if you want to try taking a live walking tour, you can start to perhaps reach out and talk to the locals there about how to do that. And most importantly, guys, you've got to decide when you will go. When will you do this? Okay. Again, remember, someday is not a day on the calendar. So pull out your calendar, put on your planning day, then move on and put on your when you're actually going to do it. So, have a planning session or two, and then actually start your travel from your living room and experience your ancestors. All right, guys, I am going to come back over and I'll be happy to answer questions about that. And again, if you have ever want to see where I'm at, you can find me most often times at the website or in my inbox and over on the YouTube channel. All right, so I am going to come back. There we go. Hey, you're there. Everybody's still there. Yay.
All
I'll
right.
have to
Thank
laugh.
you.
You guys could disappear and I wouldn't know.
Thank you for a great presentation, Lisa. I wasn't sure what to expect with that, of just kind of what direction this was going to go, but no, that was great. I feel like I learned a lot of stuff.
Oh,
So we've
good.
got some questions from our audience. Our first one is, are there some ways to do one of these virtual like walks, a virtual tour with either another relative or a group of relatives, or, is there a way to kind of do this as a group, or is it just kind of like a one person type of thing and then you can share it with other people, or
I think you could do it really over Zoom. You could do it where you could, have a Zoom like with one or two people, however many people you want, and kind of plan it because you kind of have to sit down and plan it whether you're planning using AI or not using AI, figure out what it is you want to do and how you're going to do it. And then you can actually, if it's more virtual stuff like seeing things, then you can do that certainly over Zoom. When it comes to cooking and things like that, maybe if you're each listening to the same music or you're each making the same dish at home and doing that way, that one's a little trickier, obviously. But again, if you're looking at virtual tours, I think if you had, if you couldn't find what you were interested in, I would absolutely reach out to some of the walking tour companies and say, would you do this for a group and see if they would work with you?
great, thank you. Another question, how did you identify local researchers? I think the obvious answer is Facebook, but is there a better way?
I usually will ask in like Facebook groups for that. Yeah.
Okay,
And
great.
if the other thing is, if I'm looking for a local research, if I am working on my family tree, like an ancestry or family search or my heritage, one of those, and I see other researchers who have similar interests, then I might reach out to them and see who do they know.
Great, thank you. Another question, how did you verify that the info that Gemini gave you about Broome Street was accurate? Did it give you any sources that you could check?
That one did not, at the time when I did it, it didn't give me sources. I could ask for sources. In this case, I did have enough background knowledge to know about Broome Street, so I had some background knowledge. If I don't know, and am I questioning what it's telling me, I will actually say, provide website, please provide and cite your sources for this, and it will do that. There is a website, there's an AI site called perplexity.ai, and that one does give sources. You don't have to ask for it.
Great. Another question, can one use the Google Street View images freely in like a report, for example, or are they protected by any copyright or anything from Google?
Not 100% sure. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Okay. Have you tried using the same prompts with ChatGPT to see any difference in the results?
Yeah, I did, and they're very similar, but I mean there are some differences, but I felt they were fairly similar. And it was kind of interesting. I realized in that stream that I would do, that's basically that I call it my conversation with it that I had, both of them at some point will go off the rails about like halfway through it, and they're kind of like, I'm like, and then I have to kind of bring them back. I bring it back and go, just remember, this is virtual. It's
Yeah.
like when you're talking to a person. I mean, really, that's in my head, that's how I kind of do it. I say please, I say thank you. You're
Yeah, no, I
welcome.
love that. I love how you were talking to it because I think that's the thing people don't realize and they don't understand unless you work with AI. You don't understand that it's a tool and you kind of have to train it. And so you have to talk to
Exactly.
it like it's a person and like just like any person, it'll be talking and it'll forget, oh yeah, that's right, it's supposed to be virtual. So they need you to remind it, remember, this is supposed to be virtual. So don't tell me to go someplace.
Yeah, and I also told it, I didn't point out, but when you write, you don't have to be grammatically correct either. I mean, I have a lot of typos. I'm not a good typist, so I have a lot of typos, or I think faster than I type, and so and it accounts for all of that.
That's great. Any suggestions for finding addresses in Europe? Amsterdam in the 1600s, 1700s have marriage bans, so know that they were in the area, but would love to find an address or even a neighborhood to Google Map.
That's that's hard. That is not an area of research that I'm that comfortable with or have done. I haven't done any research in that area. I typically, when I hit something like that, is I will reach out to other researchers, or if I can find I will actually I'll go to Family Search Wiki and put in the Netherlands and genealogy and see what it recommends there, because it will have a lot of resources there, and it will also have information, for other genealogy societies too.
Great. Thank you. Another question, are there any specific sites that may focus on African American heritage?
There are a lot of sites out there. I'm not a specialist in that area, so I'm not as familiar with it. But there's a museum that has, did it open already? In Charleston, South Carolina, there is an African American museum that either has opened or is getting ready to open, and it's a huge kind of resource center and research and museum. And so, if you Google African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina, that should get you there.
Great, thank you. Um, how can you save these virtual tours? So if do the prompt in Gemini or in ChatGPT, and then how can you save that to then refer back to it?
It'll actually keep it for you. In fact, I tried that today. I actually went back. I had to go back a long ways to find it. Chat GPT, I think, is they're searchable. You can search your threads. It has a certain little search. Gemini was not that. I just had to kind of go back and back and back. Typically, when I do this, I will actually do that, and then I'm creating another document off to the side, like a Google Doc, where I'm just typing up, okay, these are what I want to do, and I'll copy and paste the important pieces.
Gotcha. Has AI reached the level that I could type in, I want to see the neighborhood where my relative lived in 1901 and either pictures or film? Are we at that point yet?
I'm not sure if it's at that point or not. There could be some out there that are, but I actually haven't tried that. I should really actually try that. I usually just head over to Google. I'll have to try that. I'm not sure. I'll follow up on that one.
All right. So Google Maps Street View is really just for like contemporary views. So is it possible to get something like a virtual walk down the street as it was in the 1890s, for example?
I'm not sure how to do that. I can, you can find historic maps, but I don't know. It would probably not, because it would have to be a recreation of something. But yeah, this is more, you're right. I mean, Google Street Maps gives it as it is, basically contemporary times today. So you can only go back, I was looking at ancestors who were in that area, from the late 1800s, early 1900s. So those are still, many of those buildings are still there. Not all of them, but you can get an idea too of what they're looking at.
Yeah, no, that's great, especially for a place like New York City where some of those buildings, are still going to be there, or if not the exact building, a similar building to like the tenement house that you were looking for. So
Right.
that's really cool. What was your personal favorite dish generated by an AI prompt?
A dish, like a food dish.
Hmm.
Those potato dishes were really good. But I did click through those, and I mean, they go to. they went directly where they said they were going, and they were accurate on what they recommended there as well.
Great. Thank you. I'm just checking to see if we have any other questions. Got
Hey, Robin in the chat said it might be worth asking local historical societies for what images they have. Definitely. The New York Historical Society has, and the Tenement House has, would have 1900s film. Yeah, the Tenement House. If anybody has ancestors who came through the Lower East Side of New York, you've got to visit the Tenement House Museum.
So we got another question. When my ancestors lived in Poland, it was part of the Russian Empire. Do you have to refine the prompt, especially when you only know the town and not specific address? I know some towns have changed names.
It's actually pretty good. I mean, because I don't know where in Lithuania this particular family was. I mean, from when I did this original prompt for that, I was actually working with it AI on different a different issue, and I was having issues with the different town names because of the history in that area, and it actually could account for a lot of that. So I didn't have, I put in one, and it's like, okay, well, it would also be known by these other names, and this would have been the Russian name, and this would have been, when it was back to Lithuania, and then when it was, so it would always tell me those kinds of things. So yeah, and if you're not sure if it's being really accurate for that, ask it for a source.
Yeah, I love that. All right, let me see if there are any other questions. All right, I think that might be all of our questions. Lisa, do you have any parting thoughts?
Experiment with these guys, and don't, sometimes people, I know people are still sometimes a little hesitant with the AI, but just experiment with it. And sometimes, it goes a little off the rails, and that's okay. You can bring it back, or just I delete that thread and start over if it really goes crazy. But no, it doesn't usually go crazy for me. Usually it's pretty accurate. I'm not, because of the types of things when you're looking at a virtual travel thing, because when you're looking at those types of things, it's fairly accurate. If I were looking for stats and statistics and things like that, then I might, maybe it's not, it could be a little more unsure, but it's definitely continues to change. So definitely try it and see.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm gonna probably do some playing around with using this to recreate some of my ancestors, virtual areas. Like I think
Yeah.
this is great. All right. So thank you again to everyone for joining us tonight. And of course, a big thank you to Lisa. What a wonderful presentation. As a reminder, all of our Genealogy Week presentations will be recorded and will be available along with the handouts at hcplonline.org for the next 4 weeks. Don't forget to complete the quick survey after the credits. We use your input to choose topics for our virtual genealogy programs. So it is time well spent and it just takes a moment. Please join us as Genealogy Week continues this Thursday, January 30th, for usingfamilysearch.org, a free genealogy resource website. Registration is available on our website, and we hope to see you then. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks.